I'm Father Joseph Anthony Kress, and welcome to Godsplaining. Thank you to all of our listeners and supporters, especially our monthly donors and supporters. If you would like to join our monthly donations, please check the link in the description and show notes to join our Patreon so that you can support our podcast here. Luckily, today we have a special guest on this episode of Godsplaining. I am joined by Emily Wilson Hussem, a return guest, which I've always was, wondering how we were going to approach this, if we were going to go tiny desk style and only do one interview per person, or if we were going to have repeat interviews. So we're breaking the mold. We have Emily back. We've had her a few times, but we would love to talk with Emily about her latest project, her new book that just hit the shelves. But before we dive into that work, Emily, first off, welcome. Always good to have a good friend back on the podcast. Could you give a little bit of an intro for our listeners on yourself and who you are?
Yes. My name is Emily Wilson Hussem. As Father said, I'm from California and I love the Lord. And that's really the only thing I want you to know about me. I don't care about really anything that I do. My goal in life is to say yes to anything God calls me to. So I'm just grateful to be here with you.
Mm-hmm. No, like I said, it's always good to have friends back on the podcast and have a good conversation. We've talked in the past about things like marriage prep and your ministries and work with young women, which is more along the lines of what we're going to talk about today. Because you have a new book that's out, which is called Sincerely Stoneheart. And this book is in the, I don't want to say genre, but maybe inspired.
Spirit.
Spirit. Yes. Thank you. Spirit of C.S. Lewis and his work of the Screwtape Letters. But it's a very kind of in that spirit, continually in that theme, but speaking in that kind of same vein, more about the heart of a woman and the work that the evil one does to exploit that and kind of deal with it there. So can you then speak about this new book and give us a little bit of an introduction to the book itself?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cool thing about the Screwtape Letters is that people have been doing Screwtape Letters sequels for many, many years. The first one was in the 1950s. So there's a long list of authors who have just done this in the spirit of the Screwtape Letters. And even C.S. Lewis, he says that he is not the first one who did this. And I quote that in the introduction of my book. He said, someone tells me that someone wrote letters from one demon to another in the 1700s and that Lewis was not the first to take this on. So many authors have done this. And the beautiful thing about Screwtape sequels is that the author writes it from their own perspective, their own life, their own experiences, their own faith, right? People of different Christian denominations have written all kinds of sequels. And I've been walking in ministry with women for 14 years now, which makes me feel very old. I began as a high school teacher for teenage girls when I was 21 years old. And so I've been walking with women for 14 years. And over the years, boy, oh boy, have I just seen the ways that the devil tries to make women miserable, discouraged, fearful, angry in every way. Then the pandemic hit and I got a lot of time to reflect on all those things. We all got time to reflect on our lives, did we not? We all sat around and had a lot of time to think. And
for better or for worse, there was a lot of time to think,
Oh my gosh, yes. So many people, you ask them, what are some good fruits that came out of 2020 for you? And what are some of the really hard things? That reflection for a lot of people, I think it changed a lot of people's lives. And I really got to thinking, like, why? Right? Like I knew, why are women so miserable? Why are they so insecure? Why are they so fearful? And then I was like, all right, I'm going to start to unpack this. And I wrote my first letter. This was in 2021. And then it all just flowed out. It all just kept coming. And it became this book that is a work of my heart. It's basically like a memoir of all of the things that I've seen women struggle with for 14 years. Of all, some of my story is encapsulated in this, but most of the letters are just the stories of thousands and thousands and thousands of women who have shared their hearts and struggles with me. And this book is not just for women. I'm handing it to every priest I know. I'm like, if you want to understand the heart of women and what we face in our day-to-day lives, read this book, husbands, boyfriends, and everything in between. I've had a couple of husbands who said they read it and they just loved it because it gave them an understanding of both their wives and their daughters. And I was like, love that. So that's really where it came from.
We were just talking before air about how one of our friends just had a new baby girl, 3 weeks old, and I was like, he needs to read this. Like, he's now
Mm-hmm.
a girl dad, and this is as he's raising a daughter who he's taking that responsibility very
Mm-hmm.
seriously. He's like, okay, I'm a girl dad now. Like, I need to know how to do this. He's taking that responsibility seriously. So I was thinking, definitely, I need to get this book into his hands and things like that.
Absolutely.
Obviously, every letter, every chapter of the book, but every letter
Mm-hmm.
has its own
Mm-hmm.
kind of theme on
Mm-hmm.
this. And, there are certain themes that are spread out over multiple letters and,
Yeah.
and things of that nature. But looking at the beginning of it, it obviously is addressing the identity of women,
Mm-hmm.
in how the evil one will attack the identity of women. Can you kind of give us some insight into some of those early chapters, especially, uh, what the evil one does to kind of manipulate and twist a woman's kind of self identity or self
Yeah.
perception in that way?
For sure. So beloved is who we are. We know that
Hmm.
it's who we are in the core of our souls. Nothing can strip that away from us. But I've seen in my own life and the lives of women, um, women really struggle to believe that. And
Mm.
so every letter has a song title. I'm a musician,
I was like,
and
you're a
I've
musician
always
at heart.
loved,
Come on.
right. And I'm,
Yeah.
like I said, I feel old. You get CDs, right, and you get the CD art
Yeah.
and all the things that go into that, and all like every song title. I just love the way songs are titled as a musical artist. So I gave every letter a song title. And the one about identity is called Looking for the Keys. So as I would sit and just pray, as I would read, or as I would write, these analogies would come up. And I was just thinking about our identity as beloved. And the day before, I had lost my car keys. You ever lost your car keys?
Oh,
And
yes.
I go to like leave and I have to be somewhere. I don't remember where it was. And I was like scrambling around the house. You ever felt like
Hmm.
this, listeners out there? I was scrambling around the house. I was looking. I was like, oh my gosh, is it in this bag? As a mom, I'm like, is it in the diaper bag? Did I put it in like a pocket of one of my jackets? It's the wintertime. So I'm scrambling
Hmm.
around looking everywhere. And as I'm writing this letter about identity as beloved, I'm like, oh, that's the way women look around for their identity their whole lives if it's not told to them and we're not
Mm.
helped to and supported in believing it, right? Our whole life, women and men, right? I'm just going to talk about
Yeah.
women for now because that's what
Yeah.
the book is
Because that's,
about. But this,
yeah,
we
the
can
book is
talk
about
about one
women.
thing at one
Yeah,
time, right? In life,
exactly.
everybody wants everything to be included at once, but I'm just going to talk about women. Women can spend their whole lives just scrambling around looking for identity in possessions, in appearance, in
Hmm.
our report
Hmm.
card, in titles, in the milestones that we reach in life. You get a boyfriend, you get a fiance, you get a husband, you get married, you have a kid, you buy a house. All these things, we can find our identity in there. But if we're looking for identity in those places, it is like we spend our whole life scrambling around looking for it. Is it in the pocket? Is it in there? And we try to put it in all different kinds of places. And in the book, I say she didn't realize that the keys were in her back pocket. If you ever
Mm.
had that, you're like looking for your
Oh, yeah.
glasses and you're like, oh, they're on my head, right? That feeling of, oh, I am so silly. It's been here the whole time.
Mm.
And that's the reality of, I really believe our identity as beloved. You don't have
Hmm.
to go
Hmm.
looking for it anywhere. I love Henry Nouwen's book, Life of the Beloved. It's an
Oh, yes.
amazing read.
Hmm.
And it's really like, no, this is who you are. There doesn't need to be any scrambling, grasping, striving. It's God, right? The who God made you to be already, so
Hmm. Hmm.
that was an analogy. There's many more in the book that I just had this like clear
Yeah.
revelation. Oh my gosh, this is what it's like, you know
Well, it's that concept of like searching and trying to grasp at, like, okay, is it over here, or maybe I left it there, or you're trying to
hmm
put your entire past under the microscope of where was the last time I had my identity, where was the last time I had my
yes.
keys, and you're like kind of so focused on the past and you're so focused on all these other things. But you could also go the opposite way of, it's like, well, I'll find it eventually. Like, I'll stumble upon it
Mm.
if I just work hard enough, if I just keep my head down, and it'll happen sometime in the future. And you start to address like kind of like those aspects of productivity, which once again,
hmm
we're speaking about the female heart. the
Mm-hmm.
feminine heart here. But I think that's also something that is so applicable to everybody, is like this concept
Absolutely.
of our identity being productive,
Mm-hmm.
and saying like, oh, as long as I do more in the future, once I get to the future point of this future milestone, or once I'm able to produce something external to me, it will reflect my internal dignity
Mm-hmm.
for that. So in a very unique and feminine way, because I can only speak from the masculine side of things, but like,
Mm-hmm.
how does that lie get, or how does that truth get manipulated in a feminine heart with the struggles of kind of productivity
Yeah.
identity, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or success
Yeah.
identity in that way?
Totally. Yeah, really, it's the lie. And you might have felt this lie in your life, or you listeners out there. You are what you do. You
Hmm.
not like
Hmm.
you are like the measure of who you are is what you can produce. And I talk about how I started feeling that way. And I feel like a lot of people feel that way when they're children in school and you have your
Hmm.
report card and you have this list of letters that shows what
Yeah.
you do. Right. And you
Hmm.
are judged based on that. You get a GPA or you get an A or a B or a C. And it's like, oh, this is who I am. Like what I can produce is the only thing that matters about me, right?
Hmm.
Did you ever feel that way? Like your report card, you're like, oh
Yes,
my gosh.
absolutely.
And so
Your
that
entire life was
messaging,
ordered towards that report card.
your whole life,
Whole
every
life.
test, every assignment, it was all for your report card, a
Hmm.
collection of letters that says, this is who you are. This is how worthy you are of the
Hmm.
honor roll, of all of these different kinds of things. Everything is ordered toward that. They call them extracurriculars because they don't go into that report card, right? They're tangential things that like you can
Yeah,
enjoy and have fun, but your report card, you are what you
is the
do.
main thing. Yeah.
And honestly, I in the book I talk about how I really felt in my own life as I looked at that that's the way the enemy moves us away from prayer, because prayer doesn't feel productive often when
Mm-mm.
it's happening for so many people, right? You maybe you're more peaceful internally, but if when I spend
Yeah.
an hour in
Yeah.
prayer, I have nothing to show for it, right? Quote unquote.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
knit a sweater. I didn't clean the kitchen, right? There's like, if I'm looking around, nothing is different except the internal parts of me, right? So I feel
Mm-hmm.
like the enemy has moved us away to say, you're wasting your time when you're doing that lie. Like this
Yeah.
is a waste of time, which is like the greatest lie.
Mm-hmm.
You're wasting your time. You didn't produce anything. There's no you can check like pray off the to-do list, but what's really different, and I feel like that's a way that the enemy has worked in the lives of so many
Hmm.
people. You are what you do, and you have to produce, produce, produce. And prayer, right? If we're looking
Yeah.
externally, produces nothing. So it's not worth your time.
I love your discussion on that, because I typically will speak with individuals and speak to myself in the mirror
Mm-hmm.
and realize that prayer is a waste of time.
Yep.
That's exactly what it is. You're wasting time. And it's like, well, our most important resource isn't money, but our most important resource is time, because you can always get more money, but you can't get more
Mm-hmm.
time, and
Mm-hmm.
time is money, and all these things, right? But when you sit down to pray, like, you're wasting time, but you're
Totally.
wasting time with God. And I always, we'll talk to people, and it's like, this is why it's really important, I feel, to have like hobbies, and
Mm-hmm.
to have like appropriate leisure where you do activities just because you enjoy them,
Mm-hmm.
and there has no like really productive output. um, because if you learn to waste time well in this life,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll be more comfortable wasting time in prayer with God.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you waste time in prayer with God, the more comfortable you are with healthy leisure. And so they go
Mm-hmm.
hand in hand with each other. You kind of always have to have both. But it's recognizing that, if my relationship with God is the priority, the primary relationship of my life,
Mm-hmm.
the fundamental relationship of my life, I've had a relationship with God before I've had a relationship with anybody else in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Then I need to actually value that and be unafraid to spend time with that, in wasting time with that. Like,
Totally.
that's
In the
that's a
world, the
that's an
way the
appropriate
world
thing.
sees as wasting. Yes.
Exactly. The world will call it a
Abs.
waste. The world will call it
Totally.
not productive, but recognizing that this is actually the most valuable thing
Yes.
in those ways. And
Absolutely.
sometimes I've drunk the poison for so long that I forget, and it feels like a waste, and I hate it, and I'm uncomfortable when I'm trying to fidget around but it's like, it's okay to habituate myself to this. And sometimes, it helps me by having a hobby or things like that, but to see that they
Mm-hmm.
both play in each other. So I,
Absolutely. It's
yeah.
so important. And the way that we're wired, right? Like I said, from when we're
Mhm.
small, it's why people can't rest now. It's because you're supposed to
No.
produce, produce, produce.
Yeah.
Everything has to go toward producing something of merit. And like enjoying a leisurely hobby doesn't really produce anything that you can see except enjoyment for your heart, which is a good
Mhm.
thing to rest. So
Yeah.
the enemy twisted a lot of that along the way.
Yeah. So okay, I want to hit. Oh my gosh, there's so many like very unique and feminine things that you address in the book, and the lies and the
Mm-hmm.
manipulations. I just, part of me wants to do like a 50-part series on every chapter, every letter, but I can't.
There
I
is a
can't.
group
I get
discussion guide for those
30
who
minutes.
care. There's a whole
Okay.
group you can take it letter by letter with the women in
Mhm.
your group, but continue on.
But some of the really, really unique feminine things. One of the things that you mentioned was the poison and the manipulation of like envy and jealousy
Mm-hmm.
in a woman's
Mm-hmm.
heart. And I know
Mm-hmm.
from working a lot with young women in a college and a university context, how destructive envy is and how destructive
Mm-hmm.
comparison.
Mm-hmm.
The everything they're comparing themselves to online personas or their friend groups or siblings,
Mm-hmm.
sisters and cousins or things like that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a really, it looks differently for men, but it has a
Mm-hmm.
particular poison for women when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to jealousy, envy,
Mm-hmm.
comparison,
Mm-hmm.
in those ways. Can you crack open how you approach those topics within the
Oh,
book?
absolutely. I mean, I think women, speaking for women again, when we're small, we're taught that womanhood is really a competition. One of the letters
Mm,
goes
really? Okay.
to yeah, goes to the point that um, how the enemy twisted like our internal external and teaches us as girls, not all, right? Many from a very young age that the most important thing about us is our exterior. So that our
Mm,
whole life we try to spend, making our exterior look beautiful and not focusing on the interior at all, right? So, looking at womanhood, right, from when we're young girls, we are taught that this is a contest. Not all of us,
mm,
many of us. So you have
really?
to be the most beautiful. You have to get the best boyfriend. You have to get the best grades. You have to, be the lead in the musical. You have to be the varsity team. The whole thing. You have to be the best, right? So much of I can look at my life as a woman was spent striving to be the best, right? You want
Mhm,
to
mhm,
be at the top of all these things. And that letter that specifically addresses comparison among women is called Top of the Podium because the
mm,
devil really just gets in with envy, right? The sin of envy that can take such deep roots to envy what other women are receiving and what, accolades
mhm,
they're getting and how beautiful they look and how their body looks. And you're like, the devil wants our whole lives to just be like gritting our teeth with envy.
mm.
Like, I can't believe she got the part instead of learning and understanding how to celebrate, right?
Yeah.
Honest prayer. Lord Jesus, I am so disappointed that I didn't get the part. I'm going to pray right now for this woman who did. Instead of seething in envy, Lord, I'm going to offer her heart to you. I'm going to ask you to help me celebrate this, right?
Mhm,
Turning
mhm.
to the Lord instead of to sin. What an amazing concept. We try to do that every day of our lives.
We
But
try, we
envy,
strive for it. Yep, we
yes,
struggle with it, but
we
we do
struggle.
it.
Yes, we grapple, we grasp. And that, if we don't realize that, right, the enemy will continue to work on that in our lives. And I know so many of your listeners are probably young adult women and
Mhm,
women in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. That envy can take root. And then, like I said, the life milestones, when women start getting boyfriends and husbands and children,
mhm.
and then single women, right? The enemy sneaks in and says, look at her life,
Yeah.
like wanting you to look everywhere. And the big lie, God loves her so much more than he loves you, right? So he wants us to compare, oh, her life looks like this, so God must love her more, which is an incredible lie, but it blinds so many women to what God is doing in their lives, and that
Yes.
envy can
Yep.
take root, and when it goes unaddressed, it's like weeds, just weeds, weeds, weeds all over the place, affecting our relationships with others and our relationships with the Lord, which is exactly what the enemy wants.
Yeah, I mean, as a man, it's like the competitive spirit is like everything we're about. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to be striving for more, to have hunger for more. In a certain sense, you're attracted to other people that have that kind of competitive spirit.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's kind of like this, weird, um, weird application of that. But I've always found that like it does really rob, and you said it blinds you from the goodness that's happening in your life. But I believe
Mm-hmm.
that it robs you of the joy.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly enough, this other person's success, this other person's goodness doesn't actually steal away from my goodness. It's like that deep understanding of like their joys, their goodness doesn't, like there's not an finite amount of goodness to go around.
Mm-hmm.
So if this other person has more, then obviously it means I have less, and I need to be upset at that. It's like I can enter into that. So when you said the struggle of like celebrating somebody else's goodness, even as if
Mm-hmm.
even when I'm disappointed, like I can do those two things together at the same time. I can be disappointed, but also I can celebrate and enter into their joy, because there's not finite amount of God's love. There's not a finite
Mm-hmm.
amount of his joy in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
So to kind of fight those comparison competitions, to
Mm-hmm.
really be able to celebrate and enter into each other's joy is
Yeah,
truly the antidote in those ways. I mean, I've
absolutely.
seen it.
Totally. Can I ask you a question? In my own life,
Yep.
looking at writing this book, I really grappled with a lot of the lies that I have dealt with as a woman,
Hmm.
as a single woman, as a mother. And I want to throw it to you as someone who the
Oh,
listeners
hey.
trust and love so much. Would you be willing to share, because, everybody can read about all the lies I've grappled with,
Hmm.
maybe one of
Hmm.
the greatest lies that you've grappled with, maybe just in your life as a man,
Hmm.
from the enemy, or even in your priesthood, as a Dominican
Yeah,
friar
yeah,
who
yeah.
loves and serves so many people. Thank you for your yes to the priesthood.
Um, I have found the biggest lie that I succumb to
Hmm.
is imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Is the whole concept of like, oh, you may have success or you may accomplish whatever it is, but it's not really the full story. And if they
Mm-hmm.
knew the full story, they wouldn't love you. If they really knew all the ins and outs, they wouldn't trust you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just a poser. You talk a big game. You can do all these really good things, and yeah, but it's a very narrow spotlight. And if somebody put the floodlights on, oh, they would turn their backs on you in a second. And yeah, that's something that I just repeatedly struggle with and constantly have to fight back against, is knowing that unconditional love from the Lord Himself and from dear friends in my life and my family. Unconditional love means I don't do anything to win that love, but at the same time, I don't do anything to lose that love. And that no matter what happens in my life, they will continue to love me. And that helps me to fight against that whole concept of the imposter syndrome.
Absolutely.
So the other thing that is like kind of aligned in the imposter syndrome of it all is, I found that one of the core wounds, for men is that we don't feel like we are enough.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not enough for those that depend on us. Our masculinity is built in such a way that we are meant to have people depend on us, and we never feel like we can be enough for people to actually depend on us, to abandon themselves to our care, our love, whatever it is. So we're always striving to be enough for them, and we don't ever think that we are. So I think those are kind of the two lies, that I found in my own kind of masculine heart,
Mm-hmm.
and they're pretty common for most men. And I'm no different. I'm a man,
Yeah.
at the end of the day. But yeah, I think those are the two lies that I've really struggled with in that way.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. I think something that you saying the lies out loud is something I just realized in my own thing. Like you saying, you're such a poser, right?
Oh
If
yeah.
people only knew, writing in the voice of the enemy helped me identify it so clearly. So
Hmm.
when I am mothering and I hear, you're a failure,
Yeah.
you're such a bad mother, I'm like, I know that voice, and it is not the voice of my loving God. And,
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
so much in writing it this way. And I think that this is why it's so powerful to write it in this spirit. You
Mm.
identify the voice and you're like, that's what the voice sounds like. That's what the voice says. Even recording the audiobook, right? Like I read the
Oh yeah.
audiobook,
Oh
saying
gosh.
it all out loud, saying these lies and saying them in a way that just is like just cutting. I
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
now, after writing this book, I know now what the lies are, but I know now what the voice sounds like, right? Like in the letter called Hideaway, it's about shame. I say
Hmm.
all the
Hmm.
lies that the enemy says. You must prove that you're likable. You must prove that you're lovable. You must prove that you're good enough, right? Which I think goes for women too, but men in a different way for sure.
Totally.
And writing it and saying those things out loud like the enemy says them, when they
Hmm.
come up
Hmm.
now, I'm like, oh, I know what that is, and I'm not falling
Yeah.
for it this time. So that's what I hope that this book will do for women, is say, oh, I know that voice, no way, I'm not going to believe that, because I know it's a lie that I'm a failure as
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
mother, so you get to fight back. And that was my goal in writing it in this way. I was helping women fight back in knowing that voice, because of course, oh, and hopefully we know the voice of the good shepherd. He says,
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
sheep
Yeah.
hear my voice, they know it. So helping women hear it more clearly is my hope.
And I think that's a really, really interesting kind of suggestion and good. And oh my gosh, I would love to have a whole another conversation about your experience doing the audiobook versus writing the book, like being the
Oh
author
yeah,
versus being the voice behind it.
narrator. Mm-hmm.
That's a whole nother conversation. Um, but I remember one of the best suggestions that was given to me was to read the Gospels, but also specifically read the epistles of St. Paul, to read them out loud, because it's a different engagement, because
Completely.
these epistles are meant to be read out loud to a
Mm-hmm.
community. And it really changes. You can hear the inflections and just the natural rhythms of the sentences, and they carry, different words carry different weights than when they're actually vocalized. So,
Mm-hmm.
for our listeners, obviously go pick up the book. But when you do sit down, don't be afraid to actually read out loud. You're not crazy if you're sitting in your room actually reading this out loud to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it can actually change the tone and the tenor of the book when you actually give voice to it in that way.
Yes. Oh
Um,
yeah, it changes everything.
yeah. And that kind of brings me into one of the last things I want to ask you on. Um, I found, I mean, one of the age old tropes, men are very visual, but
Mm-hmm.
I think women are very vocal,
Mm-hmm.
and that words, especially when they're vocalized, um, have a unique kind of weight and importance for women in different ways. So you kind of mentioned on, kind of some of the vocal tendencies or the verbal tendencies in the book and the temptations of that. But can you speak to like kind of some of that aspect of why words matter and how words are manipulated, used, especially when they're vocalized, whether that's in gossip, whether it's in condemning women, or what does that mean for the feminine heart in the vocal temptations that the
Mm-hmm.
evil one uses for women in that way?
For sure. In my own life right now, as a small tangential aside, I'm seeing this so clearly because my daughter, she's 11 months. And when I put like a
Hmm.
little, like a friend, like a little elephant or something, she starts like, oh, oh, she starts talking to it. My sons never did
Hmm.
that. They
Yeah.
never did that. And I'm not saying this is like, oh my gosh, this is like a black and white thing. This is like all men and all women, but she is more vocal. She is
Hmm.
chatting with these things that my
Hmm.
sons did not care. They were not at 11 months talking to a little elephant. I have a little baby doll. I bring it right up to her. Oh my
Mm.
goodness. They're like having tea for two. She's just
Yeah,
chatting away with this
immediately.
doll. And the first time she did it, I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a baby do this before. And I'm seeing it more and more clearly now that it's her feminine spirit that like wants to
Hmm.
chat and vocalize coming out. It's amazing. Anyway, our words matter so much. And I wrote a different book a couple years ago, and I talked about, how in scripture it says we will make an account for everything we say, every
Hmm.
word we uttered. And if at the end of your life you stood in a room with Jesus, and you were in that room, and every awful thing you said about someone was in red and it was painted all over the walls, it was all there. And every good
Hmm.
thing you said about someone was painted in green and it was all over the walls. What color would the walls be? Would they be
Yeah.
mostly red? Would they be mostly green? Would they be brown because it was all mixed together, right?
Yeah.
What are we saying, right? And I talk about this with middle school girls all the way up until women in their 80s. As women, the Lord crafted us to be encouragers, to
Hmm.
be his hands and feet. And that means uplifting, supporting, right?
Hmm.
Every
Hmm.
awful word I
Hmm.
have to say about another woman points back to my own insecurity and my own feelings about myself. And I'm trying to
Yeah.
take it out
Yeah.
on other
Yeah.
people. But
Interesting. Yeah.
as like when I gossip, what am I saying about myself? I'm saying
Hmm.
that I don't believe in my identity as beloved and I'm not willing to treat other people as the image and likeness of God, really, right? Because not, total disbelief in my identity, but like if I am secure in my identity as beloved, I'm not going to tear other women down and I'm not going to gossip and I'm not going to spend my life doing that. So, like, looking at what we say and how we can really be the hands and feet of Jesus with our words is so important, right? You see, and so much of it is done online, right? You ever see someone tear someone else
Yeah.
down
Yeah.
online?
Yeah.
Yeah. People
Oh, it's
do it
brutal.
about me of all too often. And you're just like, what are you saying about yourself, right?
Hmm.
And how
Hmm.
can we ask the Lord if I have that temptation to gossip, to tear down? Lord, increase my charity,
Yeah.
increase my humility, increase my trust in my identity as beloved, and help me to treat everyone like the image and likeness of God, right? It changes everything to meet that temptation with an
Mm.
honest prayer to the Lord. Lord,
Yeah.
increase my
Yeah.
charity, works wonders. Don't you think?
Yeah. I do. I do. I think it's so radically important. And I think I realize the tongue is a muscle like every other muscle in our body,
Mhm.
and we can habituate it to certain actions and certain things. And what I have found is most people are really, really, really good at speaking about people behind each other's backs.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's actually a good skill to have, but we need to speak about their goodness and
Mhm.
habituate ourselves to speaking good things.
Mhm.
Speak the good things men need to hear, scripture tells us. And so if we can habituate ourselves to actually speaking good things to somebody's face or even behind their back, but only
Yeah.
speaking the good, then
Mhm.
we'll it'll be a beautiful thing. So
Yeah.
all right, Emily,
Yeah, absolutely.
thank you so much for being with us. Any last thoughts, last words, as you've kind of taken a really bold step, and I want to highlight that this was a bold move. This
Thanks.
was a courageous, bold move, not just because it's a new genre for you and it's a kind of skill that you're kind of setting out into the deep,
Mhm.
but it's very, very vulnerable, very personal.
Mhm. Thanks.
It took a lot of work for you to understand your own feminine heart in the light
Mhm.
of the Lord's mercy and love for you, but to present it in such a way that is really approachable and inviting for so many women and men in that way. So
Thanks.
I know it's been a bold move and a true labor of love, but any
Mhm.
final thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I would say to your listeners, don't be afraid to be quiet for a long time so you can do what the Lord is asking you to do. I shut down for a long time for this. I knew that if I was like making Instagram posts and making videos
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
doing all these different kinds of things, this wouldn't have become what God wanted it to be. Because in life we want everything now, many of us, to be instantaneous, right? Who is going to be
Yeah.
playing a beautiful violin solo in 70 years? Only someone who saw the value of really setting their mind to something. So I think a lot of artists, it's very hard to shut down and be quiet, to take months and months and months to make something that God is asking you to make. Be not afraid to do it, right?
Hmm.
The enemy told me, who will be still around to buy the book if if you shut down to write it, right? And
Yeah.
it's not about having people buy the book. If one woman is impacted by this book, I'm so grateful. But don't be afraid to be quiet and take time and make your art or do whatever God is calling you to do in a way that's just unseen. Christine Kane talks about being in the dark room with the Lord and just how
Hmm.
the dark room is such a place of preparation and just and beauty to be sculpted and formed. Be not afraid to be quiet and
Hmm.
take time to make something meaningful that God has asked you to make.
Well, thank you for spending the time with me today and enduring all of our struggles on the technology side. So hopefully our
That's
listeners don't
okay.
pick up on all that. We've had a lot of fun on the back end of this recording, but it's been worth it for sure.
Mhm, mhm.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Pick up Emily's new book, Sincerely Stoneheart. It's on all the kind of book buying platforms you can get. It's
Mhm,
also on audiobook, so maybe you can
mhm.
listen to Emily narrate the book herself. And then please continue to support us. We thank you all for all the engagements, the the comments, the likes, and the subscribes. Please share the episode. We really appreciate it. To our YouTube watchers, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. That way you know every new episode, guest episodes, bonus episodes, our live episodes. That way you're informed on everything. So thank you to our listeners. Just know that we're praying for you. Please continue to pray for us. God bless you.